Welcome back to Breakfast Daily on City TV. Don't forget to send your messages in. Our hashtag is Breakfast Daily, and you can send a WhatsApp message to 0550-585832. Yes, it is still Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Yes, still got my pink ribbon on. And it's just a reminder for all of us to be mindful of our breast health. Do your checks, do your screenings. And if you're above 40, talk about getting a mammogram or a breast scan, all right? Let's try to get ahead of what could be a very devastating diagnosis, but can be treated if caught early. All right, so we'll continue with our health discussions on breast cancer. Now, one aspect of getting a breast cancer diagnosis that many people maybe don't speak about is the mental health implications of this. Now, according to the American Psychology Association, women who are diagnosed with breast cancer can go through so many stressful emotions, depression being one of them, anxiety, of course. Well, what does that mean, and how can you seek help for that? Well, we'll find out today in our health discussion. Now, Dr. Kelvin Owusu is always here with us. He's, I like to call him our resident doctor, and he's back today as well. And I love your outfit, I must say.
Thank you very much.
I like your take on the pink ribbon, the pink flower.
Going all out.
You know, going all out for us. That's fantastic. But since we're talking about mental health today, we're also joined by Dr. Achu Latte, who is the medical doctor and CEO of Mind It GH. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to have you as well.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's talk breast cancer and mental health. So, Doc, you've been here throughout the month, having our discussions on boobs and everything to do with that. But we'll take another tangent today and talk about the mind and not just the physical. For a breast cancer patient, at what point does mental health care or do mental health considerations come into the picture?
Well, I mean, I must say that ideally, every diagnosis of breast cancer or any cancer for that matter should come with mental health support. You know, because we have said, I mean, in the previous episode, we've spoken about how there are things, family history, etc., can predispose you to developing breast cancer.
Yes.
However, the most common, or how do I put it, most people diagnosed of having breast cancer usually have no such precipitating factors. So there's been no family history, they probably don't smoke, they don't drink, they have nothing that would make them put them at risk of breast cancer. So they were never anticipating that they would develop such a thing. You know, if your mother had breast cancer, if anybody has had breast cancer before, you've seen it before, it might be scary because the outcome was not good, but at least you know what it is. You know, so it doesn't shock you as much, you know, when they tell you that you have breast cancer. But think about somebody who had no such exposure, and then one day goes to hospital. I mean, there's something, a painless small lump, about this size, and the doctor tells you that you have breast cancer. That's shocking, you know, and your world can literally come crashing down around you, you know. And so, I mean, a diagnosis like that should come with psychological support, ideally. But unfortunately, we don't get that. We don't get all that we wish for. And so, most women, majority of women who have this diagnosis, do not get the support they need. You know, but research has shown that mental health support is one single factor that can actually reduce the morbidity and mortality associated with breast cancer. You know, because it's kind of like going for a war and giving up before the war has even started. You know, there's no point even fighting. You know, the will to fight is not there. And so if you do not give the women the psychological support that they need, you know, they might even give up, even though they have all the resources available to them. And so we cannot overemphasize the need for mental health support in such a situation. Very, very important.
Do you think that some of the fears that you mentioned are the reason why a lot of women want to even shy away from checking and screening, because they may be afraid, what if, you know, that what if factor is hovering in the back of their mind. They don't even want to have to deal with that shock and fear and anxiety, so they stay away from even going to get checked out?
It's exactly the case. You know, I mean, so if I know that I have breast cancer, then what's the point of fighting? What's the point of living? You know, I'd rather not know and then keep doing what I've been doing all this while. So yes, you know, and of course, there's also the what's it called, the rejection from family members. You know, should such a diagnosis be made? And so if on the personal level the social support is not available, and on the professional side too, we are not getting the professional support, you know, being given to the lady or the woman in question, then it's like you are getting the worst end of both worlds. You know, and so if I mean, it will be difficult for us to change change the social perception. And we are doing that through the constant education and the engagement. It's working. People are becoming more aware that, you know, their help is needed. You know, but on the professional side, if we can add the psychological support to it, I'm sure it's going to be far better, because at least if I know that when I come into the hospital, nobody is going to judge me, I'm going to be treated fairly, or giving the best possible care, including psychological support. I mean, I would look forward to coming to the hospital, you know, because if I'm leaving the house where nobody's taking care of me, you know, nobody's supporting me, and I'm coming to a place where I'm being accepted and giving all the help, I mean, I'll come with more excitement. Of course, we know that, I mean, I still have the diagnosis, I'm still coming for treatment, but at least I'll be more excited about coming to the hospital, you know, because we know that a lot of our hospital facilities are quite scary to go into. You know, even for us as health workers, it can be daunting, you know, and so we need to put certain structures in place, including psychological support, to make it more accessible, you know, for the woman to get the care that she deserves.
Let me come to you, Dr. Achu. Do we currently have enough mental health professionals to cater to patients like breast cancer patients, etc., to help them through the journey of learning that they have cancer, treatment, recovery, etc.? Are we equipped to handle that burden?
Thank you. I would say no. So largely in the first place, there aren't many or adequate number of mental health professionals for the entire country to start with. But Ghana is making some steady progress that towards that. Sometime in about 2018, there were just about 32 psychiatrists.
32?
Yes. In the
you mean in the whole country?
Yes, that was in 2018. But however, now they have about 50 to serve the entire country, and that's very inadequate. So for the entire population alone, that's per se, there aren't enough mental health professionals, and how much more those living with the breast cancer. That also translates to the psychologists that we have. There aren't many psychologists in the country as well. So there's a lot of strain on mental health facilities and mental health services in the country. So I wouldn't say we have the adequate number of trained mental health professionals in the country.
So currently, if a woman is unfortunately diagnosed with breast cancer, what options does she have as far as getting mental health support?
Thank you. So in some centers, there's a psychotherapy unit attached to every breast cancer ward. I know when I was a student in Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, when I was training in Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, there was a psychologist who was attached to the Department of Surgery for people who are suffering with cancers. But then this is for the tertiary facilities. Not all centers have this. Many centers in the country don't even have a psychologist and that's a resident psychologist, and that's quite so much of a problem. So largely, it's the onus of the healthcare practitioner who makes the diagnosis to try as much as possible to refer the person to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist as well. However, it's supposed to be part of, should I say, a routine or a system where anybody with such, should I say, a grave diagnosis is actually made to see a psychologist. So the onus actually lies on the medical practitioner who makes the diagnosis to actually refer the person for mental health services as well.
Should it be mandatory for a breast cancer patient to seek psychological help, or is this something that is voluntary?
I would say it's healthcare in itself. Every patient has some autonomy. Okay, so I would say it's more or less mandatory. The onus lies on the patient once again to actually decide whether he or she wants the care, but then it should be encouraged as much as possible.
To improve their outcome, as Dr. Wusu was saying.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. Doc, let's come back to you now. All right, so you mentioned families maybe rejecting some patients, right, because of diagnosis. Is it important for spouses, children, even parents, family members of people diagnosed with breast cancer to also seek some kind of psychological support? Are they part of the equation, or is it just something for the patient?
It's a disease that literally affects the whole family, you know, because if the woman is likely to be a mother, you know, now she has to go in for treatment several times a month. I mean, at least is it twice or 3 times a month for about 6 months, 7 months, 1 year, you know, she's going to be out of the house for a while. There's going to be changes in roles. Somebody needs to step in and all that. So it's a disease that's going to affect the entire family, you know. And depending on how advanced the disease is, or how she reacts or responds to the medication, you know, I mean, you've seen pictures or you've seen videos where people start losing their hair when they are going through chemotherapy or radiotherapy. You know, she may struggle with even eating because it's affecting the gums and the intestines and all of that. You know, the skin changes and all of that. So this woman is probably going to go through depression. I mean, which is actually one of the most common psychological impacts of such a diagnosis. You know, and if she's depressed, then she's not going to be able to play with the children. She's not going to be actively taking them to school or being part of their education and all that. It means that the father or somebody else must step in. So it's a disease that affects the whole family. So yes, the whole family needs psychological support. You see, but then the challenge is how many of the family or how many of the family members are actually even part of the diagnosis. You know, how many of them are even aware of what's going on? Because one thing that I have realized is that a lot of women don't even share, you know, this diagnosis. It could be that they are afraid of the stigma. You know, they are afraid of the stigmatization, because there is still a significant stigmatization, because people think that breast cancer is contagious. It's not contagious. You know, you're not going to get breast cancer because you shared a meal with somebody who has breast cancer. It doesn't work like that. But that stigma is still there. So most women would not share that diagnosis at all. So even if somebody was going to offer to help them, because they are not aware of the gravity of what she's going through, they won't even offer that support. You know, so most women are forced to deal with this thing on their own. You know, and it's really terrible. But if the family was involved, they all should get that psychological support that they needed. In fact, elsewhere in other jurisdictions, the community psychological system, the community psychologists actually, you know, before COVID, they would actually go visiting, you know, and they actually, or I mean, they will invite the family to come in for a family session, you know. So the other jurisdictions are actually doing this because there's less of a stigma, there's less of victimization, because people still believe that it's the woman's fault. You know, that's, you know, on top of all the problems that women are facing, you know, it's also their fault that they got breast cancer. You know, so these are issues, cultural issues, socioeconomic issues that it will take some time to break these barriers, but gradually we are getting a lot more involvement. In fact, I mean, recently saw a husband and a wife come in, you know, for in the early stages, the diagnosis, the treatment stage, the husband actually walked the wife in and sat by her during the treatment. So I mean, that's some progress. Previously, you hardly ever see that. In fact, even the hospital setup would not allow the man to even be in there, you know, because the women would be treated or would receive their medication on the female ward, and how would the man be sitting on it? So the change is both on the professional side and the social side as well. So it's happening gradually. We are making progress.
All right. Dr. Achu, what's the benefit of seeking a trained professional, mental health professional? Some people may say, well, I get counseled by my pastor, or I have a family friend who I speak to. Is that also acceptable, or is it necessary that you seek someone who's a trained psychologist to speak to about the stress or anxiety or depression you're facing after a breast cancer diagnosis?
It's highly important to seek the services of a trained mental health professional, because these persons have been trained to understand the basis of mental health. Hence, they are able to more or less prefer some very good advice or some very good counsel. However, the parts about that social support as regards friends and family members and pastors cannot be done away with, because these are people we meet every day. These are people, we actually confide in some of them. These are people we trust. Okay? The most important factor is the kind of information we are given. Okay, is the information wholesome? What kind of information are we provided with? And how can we be sure that information is very right? So it's pretty much important to actually know the quality of information that we are being given. But however, that's quite difficult to determine with people who don't have some training in mental health as well. But then ultimately, everybody suffering from everybody diagnosed with breast cancer must seek the help of a mental health professional.
It's a must.
Yes.
All right. And on that note, we have to wrap up our discussion. Unfortunately, it's been very quick, it seems, but I'm very grateful to both of you, Dr. Kelvin Owusu, Dr. Achu Lartey. How do people get in touch with both of you?
I am active on social media, Kelvin Owusu MD, so on all channels.
Okay, so they can reach out to us. That's my organization, Mind It.
Mind It.
MINDID, Mind It Ghana.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. On social media,
Yes,
people can
all
find
social
you.
media platforms. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, doctors, for educating us this morning.
Welcome.
Mental health care, very, very important, no matter what you're facing. But because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we're spending time talking about that specifically. If you need to talk to a professional, please do. We'll be right back.